Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to the USA Prepares. Alex is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Joey is with us live in Michigan. Welcome, Joey.
Hey, good morning, Vince. Good morning, class.
Class, I get a chance to talk with Joey a lot, and I'm just going to tell you the way it is. He's one of the brightest guys I know. He knows so much about so much, and it's absolutely true. And he and I think, share some kind of connection in the fact that our fuses are getting shorter. And we experience things that just frost us. As we look at it and wonder how's that possible that this could be happening right in front of our eyes. Let me give you an example. So, Joey, we're planning this move, and we're trying to get the house ready for the next occupants, the next owners in the farm. And we want frankly, it's not finished. So I've been feverishly working on the farm, hay, equipment, spackling, finishing. For 15 years, some of the rooms have not been finished, and I've decided I've got to get this done because nobody's going to want to do it. Nobody's going to want to climb on scaffolding and hang off the edges, the sides, the ends, and stretch and get on a ladder on top of two sets of scaffolding to finish the ceilings and the walls. So I needed to get some all-purpose spackling compound. So I decided that Menards would be the place, because after making a few phone calls, they seemed to have what I was looking for. So I went into Menards with our son, and we're walking side by side, and the aisles are huge. The store is immaculately clean. It's the cleanest of all the big boxes, no question about it. And as we're walking down the aisle, we saw these three millennials who were soon to be managers of the store. Managers in training, and they were holding up these brooms, and they're just kind of doing nothing. And one of them mustered up enough courage to say, "May I help you?" And I looked at the three of them, and I said, "No." He said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Can you?" And they didn't know what I meant by that. I said, "I'm looking for those 5-gallon buckets of spackling compound to finish the moldboard. I think it's in the paint department." You think it's in the paint department? Well, thank you very much. So my son and I scoured the paint department. It's in the far corner of the store. It wasn't there. So we split up to make, the search a little easier, so it would only take like 5 minutes to find it. We couldn't find it. And I saw this other guy sitting at a workstation, feverishly entering data. So I decided that he actually was doing something, rather than just holding up those brooms. And so I said, "Y'all know where the 5-gallon buckets of spackling compound are?" I said, "Yeah. It's on the other side of the store in lumber." Now, the store is about an eighth of a mile long inside. I mean, it really is huge. So we walked over there, and sure enough, it was there. But on the way over, I said to our son, and I'm paraphrasing, I said, "I think these guys are in a contest. I think the Menards employees are competing with Lowe's, Home Depot, and Walmart to see who has the dumbest employees. I think that's what's going on." Now, I said that in a way, now we're facing the same direction walking down this really wide aisle. And I wanted to make sure he didn't have to strain to hear what I was saying. So I said it so that it would ricochet off the wall hundreds of feet in front of us and then bounce back so he could hear it. And, we kind of chuckled about that. And then we saw in front of us this father and son. And the son was about 5 years old. And the son jumps out. He's about 20 feet in front of us. He jumps out, spreads his feet apart, and holds his hands facing toward us, as if to say, halt. You're not going this way. And I just laughed at this little tyrant in training. And I said, you really think so? And I looked at his father, and I, with kind of a look like, he must be really proud of this young man, And then we just kept going. And by the way, we didn't slow down. We didn't slow down to greet him or shake his hand or thank him for interrupting us. We just kept going. And this little tyrant jumped out of the way. And, if his father had a skirt, he would have been hanging on to his father's skirt. How did we get to this point, Joey, where we've raised little monsters like this? Now, at Menards, it's different from Walmart. Walmart, you see the freaks. In Menards, I see parents bringing their children with them when they're buying the do-it-yourself kind of project items that they need or want. And they turn their children loose to terrorize the store. They punch bags of birdseed, as I mentioned in the previous broadcast. It's awful. These children are seen and heard and are destructive and are a nuisance. And I think if Menards has one thing that they have to overcome, it's children in the store. Are you seeing this kind of nonsense in Michigan, Joey?
I'm seeing it everywhere, and I see it in Illinois when I stop there, or Indiana. But what I noticed, one thing I've noticed about those little kids, if they're foreigners, whether they're, hello, I am the one, thank you, or they're Spanish or they're Asian, those children act completely different if they're first generation foreigners. But if they're any one of those, anybody, and they're the product of our school system, well, there lies the problem. It's interesting listening to one of the radio commercials the other day. It says, how we can't leave no country behind. It works so well when we can't leave no classroom behind in this country. Now we're going to branch out. We're going to fix all the rest of the world's mental problems. We're going to teach them how to be like us. Yet all the foreigners seem to be able to support themselves, meaning they might not make money because they don't have an economy in that country, but they do have an ability to find water, find food, eat, work intense, which is something nobody here can do anymore. And I have to parallel the great job our public officials have done accomplishing the dumbing down of the greatest nation on the earth, turning it into a giant cesspool, and nobody says anything, and it's always this next grade. It's funny or sad, whatever you want to say. It's sad because I've got a family member in the hospital, so I spend a little more time checking up on them. But traveling, I'm more rural, and when I travel to a metropolis, it's like an evolutionary cycle. The busier that one little town gets to the next, when you get into the hub of the nucleus of the rectum, we'll call it, the asshole of the universe, is the best way to put it. The more electronic towers I see, people walk in front of cars. I noticed the other night, leaving the hospital, millennial warehousing heaven, very yuppie neighborhood, they've got dogs. German shepherds, large dogs, two of them, one of them, and they're all on asphalt. Cobblestone roads and asphalt, which, that's great. Everybody should have a dog, but it's not even fair to the pet. And they're all dressed like they just were in Colorado on a hiking trip, boots, vests, hats. It got pretty cold. And I'm like, wow, these are all wannabe people. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but, if you really wanted to live that way, why would you live in an area? And everything I've noticed, electronic, like a kiosk to pay parking, kiosk I hadn't been in a McDonald's in 3 months. I'm watching a nice young gentleman order off a kiosk. I just went up, got a cup of coffee, left, came back in because I wasn't expecting the coffee, used the toilet. He's still ordering. All you had to do is walk up, tell him what they want. He can't communicate with the person at the counter because there's something that's occurred in his brain chemistry. So you tell me what's going on. Costco now has a kiosk. If you go in there and want to buy something at their snack stand, the older people, they're at the counter. They need to be with the younger people. It's like George said once about a book, which we've never found out what the name of that book was. It was the retooling of an education system after the war to make workers, or prior to the war or after. Because before you went to a one-room schoolhouse and you went to about sixth grade. But now, after the war, you go to first, 6, 7, 8, high school, and you are prepared. You are prepared to go get a factory job and be on an assembly line the rest of your life. You don't ask questions, just like in school. You don't ask, and if you ask a question, what happens then? They degrade you. The teacher, especially if you ask a question that's way outside of that teacher's intellect, they feel intimidated. So, I mean, you think about this, but part of what I want to talk about today is trust. And what is trust? How do we get there? And just because you trust somebody today, can you trust somebody tomorrow? Think about if you were to invite a friend of yours to your home. And you've known this guy, woman, person, child, whatever you want to call them, 20 years, 10 years. And they come, and they bring their cell phone, and they're very proud people. They like to do YouTube videos. They like to tell everybody, what happened in the world today. And their phone has a GPS. Or they get invited over to the neighbor, and he goes, wow, that's really neat. I'm not going to tell them who you are and where you are. I'm just going to take a picture and show everybody and talk about how wonderful this is. Yet, unbeknownst to him, with his great intellect, you don't even know his GPS is spotting location. I was listening, and this is a class assignment. The guy's called the Ice Age Farmer. The particular one is what the hell PG&E is doing. That's the power company. So they shut the power off in Northern California, unbeknownst, and they're checking lines. So they use a helicopter with something called LIDAR, LIDAR technology. And what they're doing, they're hovering over all the buildings on the farm. They're doing a complete 3D, apparently, that can X-ray buildings. You go into everything. Does a 3D scan of the property and stores it in the cloud for another day. And I didn't even know something like that existed. Must have been what you call it, product engineered, field tested in the Middle East. I mean, because that must be a really neat system, and it's coming to a location near you under the guise of working on your telephone line. What would you think about any of that, Vince? How would you feel whether it's a drone or a helicopter comes over your property?
I'd be absolutely livid. And LIDR stands for light. That'd be LI for light. Detection, which would be the D, and ranging. That's what LIDR is. It's light detection and ranging.
It's LIDAR.
I'm sorry, LIDAR. That's correct. Light detection and ranging. Yep, that's what it is. We'll be right back. I'm not sure the customers knew, and they shut off the power. Joey, did they just shut off the power without telling anybody, like as they have in the past?
You have to watch the video. It's a 12-minute video. I don't want to misspeak, but yeah, pretty much they came out with the brainstorm. They're going to inspect the lines. They turned the power off. A lot of people said, it's just something you always talk about. The power went down. The people, they can't take a shower because they're on the well. But worse, they have animals, and they can't get water. So they had one of the neighbors that had a generator, so they're shuttling water for the animals. They show the guy in the grocery store, this is for my safety. I don't mind if all my food and inventory goes bad. This is for our safety, because they were under the guise, like the disguise, but the guise, the illusion that paradise burned to the ground, that it was blah, blah, blah. And reality is they want it. And it's interesting, they're picking these areas. And when you see the map, the map seems to be in the area where that, what is that dam that was washing out a year ago? I can't think of it. There's a dam and everything.
Yeah, we remember. Yeah, we remember the dam. Not necessarily the name. Yes, it was really serious. Right. We watched it wash away.
It still is serious, and they're rebuilding it. But there's two high-pressure water cooker power plants below that, intersections of 2 or 3 major expressways, like the one going to California, the one coming from out east, and the one going north. That's a central hub. And if you looked at all of that, if that washed out, it would paralyze that whole end of the country. Not just bringing supplies, but there's actually stuff we require from that area. So, I mean, nobody gets it. And it's much easier to just get the glazed look. Can I have extra high fructose corn syrup in my drink, please? Can I have a latte with extra whatever? There's something more and more of the few, what do you want to call them, YouTube podcasts I listen to, everybody says the same thing. Richie from Boston, I haven't listened to him in 2 or 3 weeks. He's got a bag, what do you call it, a bug-out bag. Awesome video, urge everybody to watch it. But he says, yeah, I had to go into Home Depot. And he says, I hate going there. You'd think it was you and me he was listening to. So I go in there, none of the tellers, they got a person standing by each checkout, but none of the man tellers are there. The scanners aren't working right. There's 60 people backed up with 2 checkouts. You're afraid to ask somebody a question because you know they can't answer it. And if it can't be scanned, and they're conditioning you to become more automated. They don't want you to have contact with a person. I had a bad experience at Home Depot just asking for a brochure back for Father's Day. Want to buy a tool. I asked 3 people, it's over there. Finally, I said, would you go get it? I said, I'm too old to walk. I wanted them to walk because there was no paper. So then the next day I called the store manager, and he says, what do you want from me? I've been in retail 32 years, and I can't find people to work. I said, well, is that my fault or your fault? I'm not acting as a store manager. I'm acting as the consumer. I says, and he said, well, you came after 5 o'clock. I said, so what does that mean? After 5 o'clock, you bring the simple people out? You should put a sign. If you need help, come before 5, because after 5, we hire the simple ones. The simple ones will be in our store. They're just here to occupy it. And when you say that to him, he gets insulted. You insulted what little bit of brain matter he had left. I mean, he's just like everybody else. Show me the money. He's going to come and enforce the dumbest policy until the check don't show up. And then he's going to be angry because he was promised, just like everybody's going to be angry. Think of all these people. That have been retired for 10 or 15 years pulling in either singly or with dual pensions, somewhere between $7,000 to $10,000 a month. Most of these people, when they start working 25 or 30 years ago, they were hardly making 20, 25 grand a year. Now they're getting that kind of money per month, and they love it. And they're going to vote for more free money. It's just nobody has enough. While I was waiting for the show to start, what were they talking about on the little news? GM is still having their strike, and that they're making $250 a day, and they normally make $1,250 a week, but there are $250 a week is what they're living on, and they want to get their job. They want more money. How's this going to work? Besides the $85,000 pickup.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. So, Joey, I don't know if this happens just to me, but last week, my son and I went into a Walmart in the big city of Springfield, Missouri. He needed to get something, and so I grabbed the cart, and the handle was all gooey. So I said, I've got to go to the men's room. I went in the men's room and to wash my hands, get this, whatever it was, this sticky goo off my hands. And there in the men's room, there was one urinal in one stall, and I walked up to the sink, and there's a guy, and he's at the urinal, and his T-shirt comes down to his belt, and his pants were down to his knees. And there he is, standing with his butt hanging out in the men's room, totally oblivious to what's going on. He's a middle-aged guy. So I went to I finished washing my hands and I left in disgust. I got another cart, gooey, went back to the men's room and washed my hands. My son looked at me and said, how many times are you going to go to the men's room? And I said, just once per cart. It's crazy. Why are all the carts gooey? Why do the push bars on these carts, why are they gooey? Who's not paying attention? And you would think that at a neighborhood market it might be a little bit better than a superstore. But there in that neighborhood market was this gal. She was all dressed up, looked like she just came back from a funeral. Black dress suit on, meaning she had a skirt. It was a tight-fitting skirt with a slit in it, and she had a top that matched, all black. T-style sleeves, so they covered part of her shoulder, but not her arms. Her arms were tattooed from her wrists all the way up. I don't know how far. I could only see to the T part of her top. And there she was, all tattooed. It's like a freak show. And, she was dressed very nicely. A business suit or a funeral suit or going to church suit. But she's all tattooed. And she can't fix that. But there she is, ready for the circus. It's unbelievable what I see. I see more of that at Walmart than any other store. It's at Home Depot, guys with shorts on, and they're all tattooed on their legs, and I think that looks good. But more tattoos on a greater percentage of the customers at Walmart than any other place I've seen. Do you observe that too, Joe?
I see the greatest amount of stupidity. And while you were talking, what was going through my mind was, this is call it a litmus test. It starts with Walmart. I mean, they're a very proud store. Walmart has truly achieved stardom beyond and above the average imagination. I mean, they have their own line of circus people. I remember telling a brain at the place, do you ever see the people of Walmart or the people at Target or Home Depot or Menards or Penny's or Sears? No. I said, Walmart took the stage. Walmart took the stage to create, I don't know how they created it, but I have to say one thing. Walmart is probably the most pioneering of facial recognition. I mean, yeah, they were suing Home Depot and Lowe's for facial recognition. But right. Yeah, I have to believe Sam, good old Sam, the man's family, they superseded this. I mean, because, apparently Sambo, he was the logistics manager in World War II, and he was so efficient at getting product delivered on the fronts, on the lines. His reward was, as he got a little older, to kill the mom and pop stores, put them out of business. Now, through lack of greed, ignorance, and stupidity, they can't find competent people to work, nor can really anybody else, but apparently it's a privilege. If you get a job at Walmart, it's a privilege, because I don't think you could go any lower other than to probably, the government employees. Maybe that, especially drivers' license bureaus. Because, apparently they used to be able to do a person every 5 minutes. Now it takes them 15 or 20, and they like to talk. And I guess you could fix that if you just said, here, you're going to get $10 every time you renew somebody's plates. If you want to be here for 40 minutes, but you get $10. If you want to do them every 3.5 minutes, you still get $10. It's like when migrants pick fruit. You get so much a pound or so much a bushel to pick blueberries, or so much a bushel for apples, so much a pound for blueberries. And, if you want to pick 5 pounds in an hour, well, then that's what you get, $2.40. I know people bragging they make $200 a day picking apples. It just seems impossible. But, it's all relevant. But back to the original point, we're watching this dismantle in front of us. We're watching how it almost seems time is being distorted. And I found an interesting television series called Timeless. And it was about a time machine, and the people, one group were trying to fix problems, the other one were trying to create the problem, and how you alter everything. And you start to look at, you can't leave anything out of, as ignorant as that just sounded, you can't leave anything out of the realm of reality anymore. Because there's things that are happening that, as we grew up, this was never even a thought, let alone reality. I mean, where a whole week goes by and it seems like it's one day or a half of a day. Or every time you thought you met the dumbest person on the earth, guess what? You found another one. Did you ever watch that show called Idiocracy?
Idiocracy?
Yep.
I bought it, and I found it to be so vulgar that I just watched part of it, but I got the gist of it. People are dumb as a box of rocks.
They were watering the plants with Gatorade, and they couldn't figure out why the plants were dying because they thought Gatorade had the minerals. But that's, or they have a chief rapper that was the president, and he don't know how to speak, he just raps. And I mean, that's where we're heading. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay because, all good things have to come to an end. And if people thought they had it bad, like a GM worker striking, they think they have it bad. Well, how about a guy buying a pickup truck for $75,000 or $80,000 for a diesel pickup? I noticed the one thing, most of the new vehicles that I see on the road, they all belong to a governmental agency. Every community, village, city, or town, they have usually Ford, Chevy, or Dodge, and, they're usually the best trucks. But you see what mom and pop buy. You see all of this. So, I mean, at some point, even the most shallow of us out there with very limited visual conception have to realize, how are you going to survive in what's coming?
What you're talking about is, if you look at the police cars, they are just 1 or 2, maybe 3 years old. Always washed, always clean, best tires, best of everything. And you look at our vehicles, and, mine, my daily driver is a 1996. My truck is a 2004, and it weighs less every day as more and more parts of the truck fall off from rust. And I only paid $3,000 for it, and it killed me to spend that. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, because back in 1964, if you paid full list price for a brand new 1964 Ford Falcon with an inline 6-cylinder engine, the list price was $1,495. The list price for a Mustang, brand new, $1,995, brand new, in 1964. So how do we get from that to these $70,000 and $80,000 pickup trucks? It's unbelievable. By the way, and you can't repair them. Joe, we had a Dodge van showed up here with a 360 cubic inch V8 engine, 2000 model. And it stalled. It wouldn't start. So we looked at it, no codes. You couldn't diagnose it with the computer codes because it doesn't send any for this particular problem. The problem we diagnosed to be 2 things: the fuel pump and the engine control computer. The cost is going to be for the customer, because the dealer has to fix this, because you have to have a Chrysler computer to program the engine computer, which failed. That and replacing the fuel pump in the fuel tank. It's a 35-gallon fuel tank. To do those 2 things will cost $2,000. The van is worth $3,000 if it worked.
Well, then I'd urge everybody to go out and buy a brand new car, and they can make payments on it, and then they don't have to fix it. They can just drive it, right? Isn't that what they've created society to believe? I'll just go buy a new car. And they lease them for $200. Then when they're done and they find out they got charged an extra $8,000 because they put extra miles on, they don't have the $8,000. So, I mean, nobody thinks, nobody knows what's happening. At some point, Vince, will it ever matter? I mean, what was that? They just sent that, I forget what it was. Something about, not martial law, but what was that? They put the reserves on standby. The Marines, they put the Marines on standby for something on the West Coast. And I mean, people don't know. And is it for real? I mean, because everything that our wonderful overseers do for us, who are they helping? You know, you think about where we're at, and we have more technology, but what would be different where we're at as a society or where Rome was at when it was at their peak? You know, where do we stand? Because, I mean, without the technology, and the technology is great for some things, but it's horrible for other things. You know, when you use technology to grow food, and you GMO the seed, and you lobotomize the seed, and you make it grow because the genetics have been changed. You know, I had the biggest garden ever, and I had no vegetables. Plants all flowered. A tomato would get green, and then it would fall off, and it would never get red. I had one zucchini out of 10 zucchini plants. I had a whole bunch of eggplants, and it didn't make one eggplant. I haven't done anything different. I use the same system of planting I've used for almost 40 years. So realistically, the poison coming out of the sky has to be poison coming out of the sky because there's mold, black mold, green mold, and you can't get the mold off. I mean, you know, it doesn't come off. You power wash. It's like pressure. You can get grease off of an engine easier than you can get most of this mold off of. Everybody look at a water tower. Next time you're driving by a water tower, it's got air all around it. It's usually in the air a couple hundred feet. Look at it. The whole bottom of it is black because that's where the shade is. So whatever material is being thrown at us has to be creating. That's why the trees were dying. You got the mold. What else do we have? I mean, think about where we're at. You have to ask questions about frequency. And a stadium. Think of a stadium. A baseball. We'll go into this after this break.
Yeah, and I've got a couple comments about the black mold. I see it all over, and green mold. I'll mention that after you're done. We'll be right back with Joey. Joey, you're talking about black mold, green mold, and a stadium. Please continue.
So I was going to talk about a frequency, and there's a frequency, because I don't know about frequencies. And I thought about resonance frequencies. I think about how water can be given a frequency. What's his name? Victor Schauberger. He's an old German guy, Austrian, you know, and he claimed that the water running through the rocks was charged with a frequency. And everything in life is a frequency. And think about, while we're on break, I was thinking about churches. The old churches, the cathedrals. You know, think about building a cathedral out of stone in the early, take your pick, 14, 15, 1600s. How difficult it was, because they didn't have sky tracks, they didn't have all these modern conveniences, yet they built these, and they always had high-pitched roofs, arches, and it had to been for a resonance frequency. You look at the state or federal capitol, has a particular shape, the same shape they actually have in Rome. Isn't that interesting? That same bulbous appendage at the Vatican, they have the same one for D.C., they have the same one for most of the states on a smaller version. So what does that mean? Then, grubbing in a junk store one day, I come across a book called Green Cathedrals. What is a green cathedral? I'm like, wow, interesting. So they're baseball and football stadiums. And they're just the same kind of an item, whether the Greeks or the Romans had for their games. But if you start to think about a frequency, this is, and I'm not an educated person, I'm speaking way outside of my element. In fact, of all the class we have, I'm right there below half, I'm sure, if not lower, for formal schooling. But I have a unique feature I see a lot of people don't have. I have a really good imagination, and I think about stuff, and then I do the research on it. So let's think about why those churches were a particular pitch with a particular radius, and every one of them was very tall, so it echoed in there. So a lot of the masses were in Latin. So when you're and you're babbling in Latin, which they weren't babbling, they were speaking, and they were was it a programming? Was that at primitive programming when they're speaking in Latin because you don't know and everybody, yeah, man, and you join in? Or, being raised Catholic and in the church, he would be saying everything in Latin and he'd have the little brass thing burning the incense with the chain clanging and everybody's eyes are burning and watering and they want to gag. But what was that? And every time, I remember asking my dad, I'm 7 years old, I says, well, what's he saying? He said, well, that's in Latin. I said, well, how do you know what he's saying is good for you? So well, it's the church. They're not going to lie to you. And about 3 weeks later, he goes, I thought about it. You don't know what he's saying. And a 7-year-old kid can propose that. And my dad was really a smart guy because, just because he didn't think about it, after I pointed that out, and I'm going with that story because most of the people listening today, they can go back to sleep. They can actually go right now. But if they choose to listen and they think about why the church had a high pitch, is it a frequency? The modern cathedrals of today, because most people don't even believe in God, let alone go to church. And if they go to church, it's to show off their car, their clothes, their new whatever appendage they bought. But a ball game, everybody roars. And I said 3 years ago, did you ever notice after a major sports event, there's usually a vote? And they usually have that halftime show with all that garbage and all these modern little children and rock stars that are all sexually disoriented. And, they always have some form of Egyptian motif to it. Like, they're always putting the resonance out to something other than what you would think it is. So I just throw this out here because think of a football game. Those people have such passion and energy because somebody made a touchdown. And it's like when they go home, they feel better because, wow, their team won or their team lost. And they're cheering and they know everybody's personal, and yet nobody knows what's happening in their daily lives. That nobody realizes how the weather's changed just in the last year, not to mention the last 5 years. So I would urge everybody, think for yourself. And no matter how ridiculous anything I just said sounds, you owe it to yourself if you think you want to be here into the future. You better start trying however it is to kind of learn to connect dots. Everybody sees, if I say that's red, what color red is it? Because everybody, or purple. Or if I like red and I like green, and you like black and you like yellow, it doesn't make you or I right or wrong. But we like our colors, but it's still a color. It doesn't mean we can't go forward. So I have to speculate that some of this is repairable, but you have to lead by example.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to lead by example, and that's kind of what you and I do when we challenge the system. Just when we go to a store, it's like, don't you realize, and we talk to the management, we talk to the employees, don't you realize that you're clueless, that we don't want to be here, and if we could find another way, we wouldn't be here? And I noticed at Sam's Club, they've got shopping carts all loaded up, ready for the customers to pick them up, because customers aren't smart enough to be able to pick the things off the shelves and put them in a cart themselves. So they order them on their phone. And there they are waiting for the customer to show up. Unbelievable. Joey's in Michigan, and he's one of the brightest people I know on the planet. And I'm being absolutely serious about that. And we talk all the time about how to do things better, observations. And here's an observation that I've had. So in this plan for moving out of Missouri to another location, we've decided to sell a bunch of things. So we've advertised them, and we've put them in different types of media. And here's what happened. Guy called up. We were selling a car for just under $1,000. And if you wanted to buy one of these particular vehicles, it's probably a $3,000 vehicle. So we described it. We said the pros, the cons. There was access to a lot of pictures of it, inside, outside, under the hood. We talked about what it needed, etc. And a whole bunch of calls came in. And a whole bunch of people were coming. They're coming, and they just didn't show up. Yeah, I'll be there, and didn't show up. One guy sent a message, and he said, let's see, lowest price, ? And so our son responded, and it was about $1,000. So our son raised the price. And the guy responded, yo, it was lower. You advertised it for lower. And so my son was not interested in communicating with that guy. So a guy called up. I happened to take the call, and he said, will you take $800 for it? I said, well, let me check with our son. I'll see what he wants to do. I'll call you back. So I called him back, and I said, yes, but you're going to have to bring your own battery. You may buy it for $800. We can agree on that. But it needs 2 tires, as we discussed, and you'll have to bring your own battery. And if that's acceptable, we agree on $800. You know, if it's as described on the phone. And we agreed. He showed up, and I was on the air for the last half hour. And so our son met with him, and I told him I would not be able to meet with him until 11 o'clock. He wanted to be here at 10:30. So our son met with him, showed him the car. They took it for a long drive, came back, and the man offered my son $700 for it. And my son smiled and said, you and my dad agreed on $800. Is there anything that was not accurate about my dad's description of the vehicle? Is there anything at all that is different from how it was described? The guy said, no. No, it's exactly as you described it. So my son said, so it's $800. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is this particular buyer tried to get another $100 off, even after he agreed on a price. Now, yes, he didn't see it, but after he saw it, it was actually better than what he thought. But yet he still tried to get it lower. Now, if it happened to me, I probably wouldn't be quite as nice as our son was. I would have probably shown him the door. But our son didn't. Then we get these messages. Text to landline. So we have a landline. And these automated messages come in, and they say in a humanoid AI type voice, here's a text to landline message. And the message is 2 words. $800. That's the message. Now, what would you do with that? Another guy called me, and he started talking about the vehicle, and he said, so you have this vehicle for sale. I see it's for sale. I'll give you $700 cash for it. And I was, after all these calls, this was just one more call that just put me over the top. And I said, and he didn't say, the normal customary things would be, hello, I'm calling about your ad. I noticed that you have a vehicle for sale. It's a such and such a vehicle, make and model. Is it still available? I'd say my name is it still available? And then we would discuss it from there. No, this guy goes right into, I'll give you $700 cash for the vehicle. And the first thing that came to my mind is, of course it's cash. Am I going to sell a car to someone I don't know for anything other than cash? I don't think so. He didn't ask about the title. He didn't say, I noticed that, you've said A, B, and C, and here's what it needs, and is there anything else I need to know? He's just talking about he's willing to give $700 cash. So my response was, I listened to him for a few minutes, and I'm thinking, what am I going to say to this guy? So I said, well, I took it the other direction. I decided to play with this guy. I said, gee, that's a lot of money, $700. cash. Now, it was listed for just under $1,000. So he was taking $300 off. And I said, oh, that's a lot of money, $700. Now, I was thinking more like $150. And he said, okay, I'll give you $150 cash. And I said, $150. You'll give us $150. And then he started talking some more. And then I said, well, I'll give him the message. I'll give our son the message. But there might be somebody coming to offer him $1,500 this afternoon. So I took this guy way below and way above just to see what would happen. The guy had no idea. At the end of the call, he was totally confused. But the whole point is, what gives? How come we can't communicate anymore? And if you look at that, and then you look at the 1895 8th grade final examination in Salina, Kansas. So if you want to graduate the 8th grade, you have to complete this examination. Okay? And just one small part of the examination is write a composition of about 150 words and show therein that you understand the practical use of the rules of grammar. Okay, that's just one small part of this final exam. Another part of this final exam is, this is in mathematics, a wagon box is 2 feet deep, 10 feet long, and 3 feet wide. How many bushels of wheat will it hold? Another question. If a load of wheat weighs 3,942 pounds, what is it worth at 50 cents per bushel, deducting 1,050 pounds for tare, T-A-R-E? Another question. District number 33 has a valuation of $35,000. What is the necessary levy to carry on a school 7 months at $50 per month and have $104 for incidentals? Okay. Do you think, Joe, that today's millennial could pass that test or answer that essay question of 150 words?
They don't even know what you just said. That's why they got them a kiosk to order their food. That's why they had No Child Left Behind, because prior to the No Child Left Behind, I think you had a fighting chance to figure all of that out with reason. But, the common sense was, with No School Left Behind, that is exactly its intent. And I mean, I hate to say it that way, but how else would you imagine you could take, because when did that happen? Was that in the 80s, 90s? I don't even remember.
No Child Left Behind was a W, as he would say it, W. George W. Bush in the early 1990s. I was there for that. I couldn't believe it. No Child Left Behind. I was teaching in the school system at the high school in Virginia at that time, and my response was, No Child Left Behind. You mean no child has a chance, or no child gets ahead. That's what you mean. Part of this 1895 Salina, Kansas 8th grade final exam, one item is write a bank check, a promissory note, and a receipt. Now, how many children do you think in 8th grade could write a bank check, a promissory note, and a receipt?
I got a better one. How many 25 or 30-year-olds could do that?
Right.
If they're using the kiosk and they're using their phone, they can't speak. They can't have a conversation. The guy with the car, he doesn't know how to negotiate. So, that's why he spits numbers out. But, we go back to that first word I talked about. I says trust. What does that word trust mean? And who will you trust? Because take your incident with one car sales or 40 people responding to a Craigslist ad. You can't trust 99% of those people.
Let me give you an example. Concrete example. So here in the Midwest, There are companies that have lumber. They either saw it or they've got logs and they strip off the bark. And during the summer months, they don't know what to do with it. It just piles up and it's a fire hazard. So they give it away, or they used to. They don't do it anymore. They used to give it away. And you could just take your truck over there and you'd load from the pile and take it back home with you. But in the winter months, when people want to really need it, it's in demand because people aren't smart enough to get it during the summer and let it dry out in season. So they get it the last minute. So what happens is they sell it in the winter. Well, they've been selling a truckload, meaning a pickup truck, for $20. So you go there and you load it yourself and you put it on your pickup truck. And what they figure is that you're going to be reasonable about this and you are going to not heap it up so it falls off going down the road. You're going to have a safe load, and that's what they anticipated, meaning the sellers. Well, and you load it yourself, so they don't have to pay for labor to spend an hour loading the truck. One gal shows up, and she takes these 8-foot-long 4x4s that she finds at this location, and there are other trailers that have been already loaded, and people are going to pick them up. And she takes these 8-foot-long 4x4s, puts them in 4 corners of the bed of her pickup truck, and carefully stacks 8 feet high a load. And she takes the wood out of the trailers that other people have already loaded. She steals their wood after she paid the guy $20. Now, do you think that continued? Absolutely not. She shut down the whole thing, all by herself. Now it's $40 a load for a pickup. It's twice as much. So, like in the story of the pickup truck load for $20 for firewood, and then this woman just totally abusing the system. Who in their right mind would ever have thought that this middle-aged gal, would do that? I mean, nobody in their right mind would think that would happen. So what does the company do? They shut it down. So now it's a flat pickup truck load, and now it's not $20 anymore. And it's not free anymore during the summer. It's $40 for a flat load. So we're trusted to return our shopping carts to the cart return, but hardly does that happen. Now shopping carts are left everywhere to blow in the wind and sail into cars that are parked downhill from where the carts are just abandoned. We trust shoppers not to open the ice cream and lick it and put it back, and we trust companies to honor their warranties that they claim that they will honor before the purchase, like technical support. So you buy this thing, you can call us if you have a problem, we'll help you. And then they end up saying, well, no, it's not free. We have to charge you for that. Or you try to communicate with them by telephone because they used to have a number, and now they disconnect that number, and you have to communicate with them by a text system on the internet, but they don't respond to you. They change the terms and conditions. So you buy it thinking one thing, and then right after you buy it, you find out that they lied to you. So in terms of trust, Joe, trust is rare. I rarely see it, and I don't trust people to honor their commitments, including, and this is unbelievable to me. So we were going to have a guest come to the house for the first time. And it was a big deal, So what do? Well, there's 2 boys involved, Mrs. Finelli and I. So we mow the lawn. We've got a 1,300-foot long driveway. Mowed nice strips down the driveway on each side to make it, more presentable. Normally we'd let the cows have that extra grass and use it for hay. No, we mowed it and cleaned it up. Not that it was messy. It wasn't messy. It's a farm, right? Cleaned up the shop, straightened up the house. Took 3 days. 3 days. I'm continuing spackling. We're doing all this, and this person's going to show up, and we're going to make dinner. And we've got a special meal planned, and an hour and a half before, cancellation. I've had it. I've absolutely had it. People will tell me, friends, hey, I'm going to stop by this weekend. Okay. And they don't show up. They forget. And I planned for it. I stop what I'm doing. Well, I used to. Not anymore. Not anymore.
So probably, Vince, that's why you're leaving. because the terms and condition of the original idea to be there to help people, and I will assume the last-ditch effort to help them build their own little self-reliance community, and they were so generous in the response in the lobotomized state. And I have to say it that way because, realistically, I'm sure there's a lot of good people that are listening and a lot of good people, they don't like to be, have the light poke on their spotlight, so they just stand back and be quiet. But, you're the guy that's been talking about how to help, what to do, like all those people at your roundups, those wonderful papilloma viruses that would show up to the Jimmy's Egg and the other place and come because they didn't have a place to be. They disrespected your 2+ hour travel time round trip to get there, the prep time, and the 2 hours you wasted there. And every day for how many years? And all these people thought they were doing you a favor. I'm at the same place you're at. The difference is I'm going to probably just leave, and when the time is right, and they can have what I have here. They can have what I have here because I feel the most important thing is to become mobile. Because you don't know if Mount St. Helens erupts or the Yellowstone or Wyoming, whatever, geyser pukes, and it blows soot all over and blocks the sun out. I mean, we can't make ends meet, robbing Peter to pay Paul as a society. Nobody can grow food. Nobody can do anything. So who do you want to help? And your suggestion, The Walking Dead, I have to say, I got on it. And we'll talk about that when you come back, because I think that's important for anybody that really wants a hands-on look at the future.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to that. The Walking Dead, you need to watch it, class. It's mandatory. And I'm not kidding. It's mandatory if you want to survive. You don't have to watch it, though. Joe, you want to talk about The Walking Dead? So, class, just to let you know about it, this is it's a horror series. But I'm not suggesting you watch it for horror because I really don't like watching anything that doesn't have educational value. So I will watch science programs, I'll watch historical programs, documentaries, but I don't watch any, horror to me would be like going to a ball game, total waste of time and effort and money. Well, The Walking Dead is different. It's in its 10th season right now, but 9 seasons are available on Netflix, but you can buy it. And what we did was we found it used, and we found, I think, seasons 1 through 5, and then got 6 and 7, and got 8 and 9, and that's what we have. And it is absolutely brilliant. And it's about an event that happens, and at this point we don't know what caused it, but everybody gets sick, or almost everybody. And when somebody dies, regardless of the cause, they become one of these walking dead. So just a small portion of the brain works, and they walk around, but they're hungry. They want to eat anything that's alive that has blood. So mice, rabbits, people, especially people, because there's a lot of calories in a person compared to a mouse. So these zombies, and please don't think that I'm into zombies. I'm not. But I do appreciate what this series is about. Not so much the dead. I push those off to the side. That's a constant threat. But the portion that I think is so important is the interpersonal relationships, the dishonesty, the distrust, the bona fide distrust, and the trust, and the neglect, and the carelessness, and the lack of knowledge, and these me-first millennials, and people who just can't follow the rules. Like, let's say you have a security watch, and you assign some people to watch for the common good of everybody. And they walk off, or they don't pay attention, or they just don't do what they're supposed to do. Like, if someone's so bad, they're put in a prison cell in the village because they just can't be trusted. They've killed so many people, you can't trust them, so you put them in a prison cell, and then some character decides, I think he's a good guy. Or they don't check to make sure that the cell's locked and the guy gets out. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about. And when Joey talked about the roundup, meaning the meetup, how many of those people could I trust? Well, it turns out almost no one. Almost no one. Joey, so you want to talk about The Walking Dead? So I just want to set the stage for it.
Right. I don't care about zombies. That's the worst part of the movie is the ridiculous, ignorant, And when they kill one of them and they get the blood and guts on them, like that's not going to create a bacterial infection in them. But you're right. The whole story of how people interact, their lack of knowledge, even the dumbest people, once they were pressured, they were pushed to a place, they changed. And, you actually, that's one of the few shows you knew most all the characters' names. And it's a very interesting, very, very interesting scenario. Don't watch it because you think you're going to watch a zombie show. Watch it because watch how the people change. And for me, I'm visual. I need that. You're right. The millennials, those were the best when they were doing the cannibal program. I mean, but there's so many different parts of this. And you think you can trust somebody? Sometimes you can't even trust yourself because there's certain days you know you're doing wrong by eating something or taking a shortcut, and you still cheated yourself. So don't be mad. Just realize where we're heading, and not everybody wants to go. And I would urge you. I'll tell you this: since I watched the ridiculous show, and ridiculous because of the zombies, but not ridiculous because of the patterns. I want to have more fun today because I don't want to be looking for a place to take a shower or a place to have a warm spot to sleep. And one thing I've always done is to save for a rainy day. Well, there will come a time in our world, and I guess you could look at World War I or II, those people thought they had security. And no matter what they thought they had, when the show was over, they had no house, and they had to start all over. Starting over is easy when you're 25 or 30. That's a lot harder when you get older because your body don't repair like it used to. So, I mean, there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things to think about. And, the most important part is being able to share. I mean, that was the only reason to talk about this today. For those that don't know about it, those that don't want to listen. But, just like I said with green cathedrals, think about the difference between a church of stone and a current football or baseball or basketball. When a group of people get together and they're all chanting the same thing and they're resonating that energy. And everything is about frequency, it's about energy, and that's why most of our modern diets are so acidic. And we go back to the show, one thing I have to say, they did a great job. Everybody's about as thin, they look like people out of the 50s on television. They all wear a size smaller, medium clothes. There's very few people that actually were heavy because there was no extra food to eat. And it's a first-hand experience. I mean, just first-hand. It's like, it's a how-to video of what's coming. Would you agree with that, Vince?
Absolutely. It is a how-to of what is coming. I think it's a documentary in the future looking at the past. And this series, The Walking Dead, you can just type in TWD on a search engine and you'll find it, The Walking Dead. And so what happens is they go back. They go back in time. And I'm not talking about time travel. I'm talking about they run out of gasoline. The cars stop working. And when the cars stop working, you can't get parts from them unless you cannibalize other cars, right, and trucks. But you probably can't get the parts you need. So once a car quits, that's it. Then the batteries quit. And how do you charge them? That's a pretty tough one. And so what happens? Maybe you can have the luxury of a horse. And maybe you can have the luxury of a wagon. So what do? They take the pickup bed off a truck and they put it on an old wagon. And they take a car seat, a bench seat out of a vehicle, and they put it on the wagon. I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about running out of everything. ammo, seeds, food. So, the used Best By date, that's a remote suggestion on a can of food or a jar of food. It really is. So we're talking about eating rats and snakes. We're talking about cannibalism and ammo. I mean, they've got guns, but the ammo's the big deal. Because you can't reload unless you have gunpowder, primers, some way of making bullets. That's the projectile that goes flying. They talk about bullets in the show. They don't mean bullets. What you shoot is a cartridge. The thing that goes flying out the barrel, that's the bullet. So you have the powder, the primer, the case, and the bullet. That's a cartridge. So once you squeeze that trigger and it goes bang, now you've got to get another primer. You need some powder, gunpowder, and you need another bullet, and you need the dies and the press to put it all back together. So it's a real tough problem. So The Walking Dead is something that you should watch. David in Illinois, welcome. You're on, then Kyle's on next.
How you doing?
Hey.
I'll tell you one thing real quick about The Walking Dead that bothers me. When I was in rifle competition in class with the Marines, they always told us, these guys were in combat. They said, you never, ever leave your rifle. Your rifle is your life. In those shows, people always just, either don't take care of it, leave it there, just, in a situation like that, that weapon is your life.
Yeah, they also leave car doors open. I never get out of a car and leave the door open. Never.
Now, one other thing I want to tell you real quick. They have a cannibalism situation there. Now,
yes.
They had this Swedish woman, young girl, talking about environment. Well, she just came out and did another speech here this last week. She actually, these teenage kids, somebody got her in to say this. She said, we need to start consuming and eating the babies. They cut her off real quick at this big place they brought her to speak. But the point is, some of these young people are actually taking this seriously. And that's, I don't even know how to think of that, where they're actually either considering this, that's a viable option for food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
David,
well,
I think they call that predictive programming. That's why Rick Miller will always talk about the Black Mirror. The television is reprogramming. It's like when you see most current television shows, the gang member always holds his pistol sideways. Nobody in their right mind would hold a pistol sideways unless they fell and they're just trying to shoot. But and so they're showing you to eat people because they're putting that in your thought pattern. They're teaching you how to shoot wrongly, but they make it out there because your average person doesn't have a comprehension. Anybody that's ever shot a gun knows, and especially when you're being tracked, why would you leave anything of value? You need the protection. So just the show is just to show you how people fight with each other, how bonds are broken. It's just like that BBC series I talked about, The Survivors, or what's the other one, Vince?
Jericho.
Jericho. In fact, some of the people in Jericho are in this series, and it's great. It's all this is. They didn't build this series. They didn't create and spend all this money to help us. They did this to put subliminal programming with the black screen into your mind. But use what they've done and enjoy and keep the best parts. Not everybody can do that. Just realize what's coming. It takes all the imagination out of it for you. That's as simple as I can say it.
Joe, I've got a quick question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not important at all, 10 being absolutely critical for survival, how would you rate watching this series with the understanding that it is a tool for learning about how people behave under...
Well, at least a 9.
At least a 9. David, how about you?
Yeah, well, I got to say, I think it's a little higher than that. People really need to see the actual, information you can see from something like that and what could possibly happen. You can't trust. It's rare you can trust anybody. I only talk to a few people. I just don't trust anybody.
Well, David, very quickly then, how come you seem to trust us and we have never met?
Well, you corrected me on your show before when I said people don't care. In the past, I have until I met your show. I got to the point where I've seen so much, people don't care. Unless something happens to them, then they want the whole world to stop and help them. But I see in a lot of the your instructors and students and people with your show, you actually care. I mean, I feel it. I sense it.
Very good. David, I'm going to thank you. We've got Kyle on hold, and so we'll bring him on next. Thank you, David. David's an instructor with USA Prepares. Thank you, David. Class, next Monday, Dr. Norm Shealy will be with us. He's in a workshop today, so everything's fine. He's just at a workshop. He will be back next Monday. Kyle in Montana, welcome. You're on with Joey and me.
Good morning, guys. I had just a couple of thoughts about this Walking Dead. Every time I watch anything on the boob tube, I always have in the back of my mind that quote from that executive of the TV company that said, we are in the process of, or we're in the business of telling the American people how and what to think. I can't remember the exact quote, but it went something like that. And even though I think that there is quite a possibility it will be that bad or worse in case of a financial collapse, I do not want the Walking Dead to jaundice my thought process. You know what I'm saying? I don't want because you're not going to be able to stand alone. You're going to need somebody, some people, and you'll never be able to hold off 10 or 12 or 14 people with guns by yourself. You're going to need help. And I don't want to get to the point in my own thinking where it jaundices me so badly that I don't absolutely trust anyone. Because, and I'm not saying that it ain't going to be bad, because I think in actuality it is going to be really bad, even worse than that in places. But I just wanted to throw out there the thought that the other thing I want to jump to this real quick. I know we ain't got much time. The other thing that you should really consider is how they're trying to manipulate thinking in this, especially this last series that is out here now. It's like black and white people all of a sudden, white people can't find white people and black people can't find black people for relationships. The highest divorce rate on the planet is a black male and a white woman. You can't find anything worse than that, but they're trying to tell you that somehow all of this stuff is, this attraction between the races is great and normal and creates harmony. It doesn't. I've lived it. I've seen it. I grew up with it. Anyway, just think. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree 100% with everything you just said, because it is predictive programming, but also factor in those that fail to plan to fail. And before, I would never have thought that people that I care about would want to turn on me, yet I've had it happen. Vince has had it happen. I'm sure you've had it happen.
Sure.
And you will never survive by yourself. You're absolutely right. But realistically, make sure you got all your bases covered, because that's the only one good thing about the show. Even people that thought you could never see how they would turn on each other, things happen. You've had family members, I don't care which part of the food chain, how close they are to you. You grew up with somebody, you went through your whole life with that person, could be a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whatever, and one day things change and you don't know who that person is. And you're right, that racial crap, they put that in and they ruined every show. And I mean, this show as well, they had 2 gay guys in there. They had to have that back in series 5 or 6?
Yeah.
Ridiculous. But you have to filter. You have to filter through what you're thinking about. And there's some great ideas in here. I have great imagination, and there's stuff I'd never thought about. So I just share, and you're absolutely right, and David as well, what he was saying, but just realize, that TV's been there. A thing I noticed is if you watch that on a series and they have commercials, there's a little more help with those commercials because they didn't put those commercials there, and they're specific with a particular pattern, I'm guessing. So, I mean, you have to do what you have to do, and you're right, but I'll let Vince finish up, and thanks for calling in because I really appreciate pointing that out for the rest of the class because sometimes they don't think like that either, and I'm right alongside you.
Kyle, I'm with you, and I actually thought for all my life up until maybe a few years ago that people would want to do the right thing, they would want to help, they'd want to work with each other, but I've been proven wrong so many times, and the meetup group is just one example of people I would see over and over and over like every week for years, and they threw Norm Shealy overboard. And they didn't just stop there. They threw me overboard. Now, please don't think that this is sour grapes. It's not. It was just an eye-opener, and I'm so glad they did it. And what I'm saying is people around me here in our little village, I'm trying to help them. They absolutely won't help themselves. I can't get them to lower their own electric rates. I can't get them to do anything. I can't get them to stop throwing their trash out the window as they drive down the dirt road. I can't do it. I have to pick it up. I can't. I don't think there's anybody around here, maybe one or two people who might help us, but we're outnumbered by those who'd want to take from us and who wouldn't want to help. So I hear you. I wish it could happen. And we tried to build this little village, this USA Prepares Village, and with our radio audience, only one person, one, showed interest, just one. How's that possible? But yet it is. That's what happened. And that's why I gave up on the village. Kyle, thank you. Joey, thank you.